but that we shouldn't be holding back deciding on what's already been submitted.
So there is a second issue, which I'm going to bring up after we complete our discussion of this first topic, which bears on that application that you referred to.
So what was that? I mean, I know Gottlieb was involved, and so what, was there any official, but can we give money to people who request cameras from us? Is that, I'm not that into it, to tell you the truth. I mean, that's like, there's certainly a valid point to it, but it, you know, clearly we can never give enough with that situation. That's my opinion about it.
So again, we have gotten, you know, some advice, both from the auditor's office, which is more tentative than the advice that we've gotten from the Office of the Advisory Neighborhood Commissions, because the auditor's position is always, you know, get back to us when you actually have something concrete. I've seen your hand, sir, and I will get to your question. So, but as a preliminary, before the grants committee takes a look at this, because there is no grant application that we have received for cameras. This is a project that the
We're
Public
not
Safety
voting.
Committee has decided to endorse, and they would like to get the support of the full commission in order to move forward with. But there is no applicant for this. So that's the question that we need to answer this evening, or before we actually transmit this to the grants committee, is would we consider having grantees that are other than nonprofit organizations? They could be a for-profit organization, like an individual business, or it could be a 501c6, which is a different type of a nonprofit. It's a business, you know, organization. But again, the first question that we need to address here is, would we consider making grants to entities other than nonprofits?
I think we should consider grants for anyone who submits with a good reason to submit. So many grants don't allow for the small folk who might want to promote a book, or who might want to promote a small business, to even be considered. This is the one place, if you live in this neighborhood, you should be able to come and at least be considered for a grant. I disagree with only nonprofits.
I think, but I think, Marge, with your point, I think it'd be more of a free-for-all. I mean, that means I could apply, hey, you know, I'm all that illegal dumping, let me have $500 for this, and
But
that
this
could be
commission
anyone.
still has to vote on it, yay or nay. I mean, it's we don't get that many grant applications.
So again, or actually, for the first time this evening, the funds that are provided to the commission that can be used for grants need to serve a broad public purpose. They cannot be made to individuals. That's you know, been established. So if someone has an urgent financial need, they can't pay their water bill or their electrical bill, commissions are not able to make grants of those type to individuals. Actually, our predecessor, ANC2C, learned that the hard way by providing Christmas gifts long before my tenure on that commission. But I think Ibrahim remembers that particular set of circumstances. So individuals are ineligible to receive grants from commission funds, but the question is whether we would agree to allow a company or you know, another entity other than a nonprofit to be an applicant.
Why don't we go around the horn?
So, Alvin?
Nonprofit.
Frank?
I think we should.
Wait a minute, I didn't hear what Alvin
It's
said.
nonprofit.
Only nonprofit.
Only nonprofit?
I think we should include other entities other than nonprofit, because it could be a business that would be willing to put up cameras in their area, which would fight against crime.
Alfreda? If you don't have an opinion, then that's fine.
I'm gonna say nonprofit for now.
My opinion is that also that it should be restricted to nonprofits.
Mine too.
I think it should be open. I think 501c3, 6 thing, whatever it is the alternative, should be allowed to apply for grants.
Okay, well, it's the consensus of the commission that we should restrict grants to nonprofit organizations, as it has been the ANC's practice in the past. So the second issue is frequency. How often should nonprofits be allowed to receive grants? how often should they be eligible to apply? Should that be once every 2 years, once every 5 years, or should there be no restrictions on how often potential grantees can apply for grants from commission funds? And this particularly, just as the previous question was related to the proposal to provide funding, matching funding, for the installation of security cameras to help businesses along our commercial corridors be able to enhance public safety. So in this instance, there is an application from an organization that was a grantee in the past year, and the question is whether or not we should be considering grants to the same organization within any pre-designated timeframe.
I think we should consider it if it works out from the year before. We're talking about Charles Garris. I sent that to Kevin. Did you tell? So we had one guy come because the gentleman who did the audio visual project at Walker Jones, we didn't give much follow-up, if barely any. So he came, I sent it to Kevin. I mean, if we don't feel strongly about that, I would say no, but I think people certainly should have the right to apply again. I don't think that's a big deal.
Maybe we'll just do
Once a
round
year.
robin again on that. So each commissioner would express whether or not they have an opinion as to whether or not how often potential grantees should be allowed to apply for funding from the commission, with the understanding that on an annual basis we'll designate a certain proportion of the commission's funds as being eligible for grants. So we'll start from the other end this time. Marge.
I think that everybody should be allowed to apply, whether they've applied in the last year or whatever. If they're an organization that's doing good for the community and servicing many people in the community, then they should be entitled to apply for funds. But which leads me to another question. If you are limiting to nonprofits and you're limiting when people can apply, then I think we have to decrease the amount of grants that we're going to give out, so that, because we haven't given any out yet in this year. And if you're not going to use the money for grant money, then let's use it for something else.
Right. Kevin?
Right now, we haven't received many grant applications. That could change next month or the month after that. And I think because we have limited funds and we have a limited amount in our budget that we can give to grantees, that if the same ones apply year after year, the funds would be used up and more people would not be able to apply. We don't have that problem right now, but we could have that problem next month or the month after. I'm kind of torn. If we did have that problem, I would think that we would want to limit the grantees to, once every other year or something to that effect, so more people would be able to enjoy the grants that this body could give out. But we don't have that problem right now, so since it's not a problem right now, I wouldn't have a problem with someone who applied the year before to apply again. We would have to approve it.
But in terms of policy, you would be inclined to have a restriction on applying for grants to once within a 24-month period?
Actually, I would, and that's simply because any nonprofit could apply, and if we get the same ones applying, then new ones would not be able to enjoy the largesse of these grants that we could give out.
All right, and I would concur with that. I think that, one grant every 24 months is a reasonable benchmark to demonstrate support for the activities of a nonprofit that's active in our service area.
This would not include anyone that has already applied for a grant right now.
That's the reason that we're having this conversation, because we would apply it as an
I
instruction.
don't think that's fair.
As an instruction to the grants committee.
What does that mean?
Okay, you gotta take consideration too, in grants, like Mark said, if we got, say for example, the boys club, if they put a grant in for sports uniform for like the season of football or basketball, something like that, or the other programs they got. So that organization just put in a grant for, say like for football season. So, and throughout the year, there are other things going on, and
They would be ineligible, right?
they would be eligible to apply anymore. But you still have programs, back to like Mark said, we got somebody who really doing something for the community, help the community, we're gonna have a board there somewhere down the line.
Well,
Just once, just why would they just apply once and
I,
that's it?
well, we also should recognize
It's
that,
another money.
that
We can say
these
no.
organizations, they're not solely funded by grants from this
Right.
body. They can get money from various places, and they should. And they shouldn't just rely on a grant from this body in order to do the services that they are there to do. An example of that is the dog park in my district. They got a grant last year, and they were told that, you know, you ought to do some fundraising, and so you won't apply for this grant next year. You shouldn't rely on this grant, and that's exactly what they did. They took the grant last year.
It was more than last year, it was a couple of years
Yeah, it
ago.
was a couple of years ago, I'm sorry.
It
And
was still under 2C.
yes, and yes, that's right, it wasn't last year. But yeah, a couple of years ago, and they have never been back. I've seen that they are throwing fundraisers and trying to be self-supportive. And I think that's what the grant is there for, to help new, struggling entities that are doing work in the community, to help them do the work, but not that this will be a crutch for them to rely on, because there are numerous places that charitable organizations can get money from, and this body is the only one.
Well, since we limit our grant amounts to $1,500, it's not likely that anybody's doing something that is less than the cost of $1,500. You know, I just don't agree with that.
So Alan, my response to your inquiry would be that we would encourage a nonprofit to apply, you know, for their projected needs, for specific projects that they're asking the commission to support, you know, once a year rather than multiple times a year. Rochelle?
As I said before, I don't mind people coming back once a year, but we just have the ability to say no. I mean, that's just not, I don't think it's that big if you say, okay, no. Yeah.
Frida? Which makes sense, to restrict it or not to restrict it?
Not to restrict it.
Okay.
Depends on the situation.
Okay. Frank?
I was like, I think once every 24 months, but that can be contingent upon who else may apply, because right now we have nobody, we have one on the table.
We got 3 or 4 applications. Yeah.
We haven't given out any this year thus far, so I think it can be contingent upon, or keep in mind that if you have other people who are asking for grants that year, that person